Kings and queens of Westeros, I've gathered you together to let you know about the real threat facing us. The threat is not each other. The threat comes from the sea. The threat is the army of the squishers. Behold!
Are we supposed to be impressed?
Yeah, one of my Queensguard is a squisher.
Hey, everybody!
Now that you mention it, this whole quest to bring back a squisher seemed really dumb and pointless. Sorry, guys.
Well, I mean, at least we've got Sir 20 Goodman and Sir 10 Goodman in the same place. Can we at least have, like, an epic fight? I've been getting hyped for Goodman Bowl, yeah!
No, Chad, that would be ridiculous.
Oh man, it's like this entire season has been one big waste of time.
Well, I'm going to go back to Storm's End riding my goat. Gilbert Farwind, would you like to accompany me?
Yeah, okay.
Huh, I didn't see that romance coming.
What are you talking about? The sexual tension has been boiling over all season.
Huh, I wonder if I should tell those two about what I saw at the Tower of Joy. It's kind of important.
And so our episode begins with Grey Worm, who has apparently marched his army across the continent, right through Lannister-controlled lands with no food. And he has arrived at what's supposed to be King's Landing, but frankly it looks a lot like Highgarden or Casterly Rock.
What are you trying to say, that all castles look the same? You're such a castlist.
Anyway, and then from pretty much nowhere, the Dothraki arrive. Before, no Dothraki for as far as the eye can see, and after.
Oh, come on, maybe this scene takes place over several hours.
Oh, come on, Chad. You're telling me it would take hours for Bronn to walk back from asking about pitch?
Yeah, you know, he walks at the same pace as the Whites.
Well, whatever the case, we don't seem to have an Edmure Tully. I can only assume that Jaime took him from Casterly Rock and kept him in a wagon, which means this is probably Edmure.
And then we get everyone staring at Euron's fleet. A fleet that's so dangerous it destroyed Daenerys' fleet twice. Though Daenerys is still able to transport tens of thousands of troops places. And then Tyrion proceeds to disparage Raz by saying that the brothels in King's Landing are better than in Winterfell. He seemed to be having a good time with Raz. I guess this menage a quatre was just horrible.
Anyway, the Alliance of Good arrives in King's Landing, and for some reason Missandei asks Jorah about why they built a dragon pit for dragons. Dragons are dangerous, Jorah has to explain. Apparently Missandei forgot all about this.
He came from the sky. The black one. The winged shadow. He came from the sky and...
So I guess Missandei completely forgot about that time Drogon burned a child. It only resulted in the other dragons being put in a dragon pit.
Anyway, next we find that Brienne and Pod somehow beat everyone to King's Landing despite the fact that they were on land and everyone else was by ship. And then we proceed to get a bunch of reunions. Pod and Tyrion. A 2,000-mile trip so Pod and Tyrion could say hi. These are Pod's only lines in the whole episode. And the Hound and Brienne have a quick exchange about Arya. A 2,000-mile round trip for that. That and her briefly telling Jaime to go talk to Cersei. And then there's Tyrion and Bronn who... Wait, didn't these guys just talk a few weeks ago when Tyrion snuck into King's Landing? Why are they acting like they haven't seen each other in years? And then we get the Dragon Pit scene, which, honestly makes no sense. Where are the other lords? There are 7 kingdoms, aren't there? Where are the Riverlanders? Where are the Reacher Lords? Where are the Dornish? Their army never fought in a single battle. Missandei, Podrick, and Dothraki number 3 all come to King's Landing, but no one thinks to invite Robin Arryn, the lord of one of the largest armies in Westeros.
Anyway, Cersei arrives, and I guess Game of Thrones is now being sponsored by H&M. We then proceed to not get Clegane Bowl, and then Emilia Clarke arrives on her dragon to the sound of inspiring music. As if the audience has never seen a dragon before. In fact, nearly everyone here besides Cersei and Euron has seen a dragon, so I guess we're supposed to be feeling what they're feeling? Anyway, in a meeting with 2 kings and 2 queens, for some reason Tyrion takes the mic. But Euron interrupts him, and Tyrion actually makes a callback to that mythological conversation about dwarves that Theon didn't have first season. Wow, they're really double downing on that. Anything to whitewash the fact that Tyrion said, "Ha ha, your brothers are dead and you're a hostage" to Theon first season. So Tyrion eventually gets around to saying that, hey, everybody doesn't like each other before Kit Harington takes the mic. Kit Harington tells Cersei that there's an army of the dead, and then the Hound proceeds to bring out a large box, and very slowly opens it. And then the big surprise is there's a white inside, as if we didn't see 100,000 of them last episode.
The Queensguard then proceeds to not protect their monarch. I gotta give it to D&D. They're very consistent on this one. Massive incompetence for 7 seasons and counting.
Anyway, the Hound proceeds to chop up the white, and Kit Harington tells everyone that whites can be killed by fire or dragonglass. Never mind the fact that last week everyone was killing whites with regular weapons and they were dying, and going the other way, Jon clearly stabbed a white with Longclaw during Hardhome, and it did nothing. In the book, it's very clear that dragonglass kills White Walkers while fire kills whites, but the show cannot decide what kills what.
Anyway, Euron tells everyone later, masturbators, and then in one of the most excruciatingly confusing moves, Cersei says she'll agree to a truce if the northern armies stay in the north, but Kit Harington already bent the knee to Emilia Clarke, causing the whole deal to fall apart, and Cersei marches off in a huff. I'm sorry, I can't understand this scene at all. How is Kit Harington even relevant? He controls 10,000 men according to him, and maybe 20,000 men according to Sandra. Meanwhile, Emilia Clarke has probably 40,000 men and a couple dragons. Did Cersei believe she could take on Emilia Clarke without Kit Harington's help? How? We just saw her army get mostly roasted a few episodes ago. In fact, why is anyone even here? Cersei doesn't have anything to contribute. She had one advantage, her navy, which isn't very useful against an army of the dead, and it just fucked off anyway. Trying to get Cersei on board makes no sense at all. It's like asking homeless Joe to chip in for gas for a road trip. He doesn't have any money, and no one wants him in the car because he smells like piss. Emilia Clarke even tells us that her dragon died so everyone could shake down homeless Joe. Tyrion proceeds to tell them that they're fucked without homeless Joe. Jesus, just forget about homeless Joe. The scene makes even less sense once they reveal that Cersei was tricking everyone and didn't plan on marching north anyway. So why did she march away in a huff? I guess so they could have another reunion.
Anyway, Tyrion then tells Jaime that he's going to meet Cersei, who tried to have him killed twice. Actually, other than the trial, it's only once. He and Cersei had a conversation about how it was Joffrey who hired Mandon Moore.
Did you, or did you not, order Sir Mandon to kill me during the Battle of the Blackwater? The impulse, I understand. He hates me because I'm the only one who tells him what he really is.
So Tyrion meets Cersei, and Cersei calls Daenerys a foreign whore, and Tyrion says a foreign whore that she can't abduct and beat. I guess Tyrion's completely forgotten that it was Ros that Cersei abducted, not Shae. And then Cersei is angry that Tyrion killed Tywin. And Tyrion's defense is that he only killed Tywin after he sentenced him to die. Of course, this is quite a bit of revisionist history. Tywin actually was going to send Tyrion to the wall. Tyrion then demanded trial by battle, and was only sentenced to death after Oberyn died. Tyrion's impetus for killing Tywin was actually Tywin insulting Shae, a woman Tyrion murdered just 2 minutes prior. And then things get really weird when Cersei accuses Tyrion of killing Myrcella and Tommen. Cersei's reasoning is that Tyrion removed Tywin, the Grand Protector of the family. That's certainly some odd logic, considering that Cersei had a fairly good reason for blaming Tyrion for Myrcella's death, considering that he negotiated the deal with Dorne in the first place. But instead she goes with killing Tywin. I guess I'm supposed to believe that Ellaria would have not attempted to kill Myrcella if Tywin were alive? And I guess she's claiming the same thing with Tommen? That somehow the entire debacle with the Faith of the Seven and Marjorie would have been avoided if Tywin were in charge? I mean, I guess, but only because Cersei wouldn't have any power. Anyway, the whole thing is just a jumble, not to mention the fact that it forgets the Maggie the Frog prophecy, though I suppose with Cersei's 5th child on the way, we can finally claim that Maggie was full of shit. But speaking of that 5th child, Tyrion figures out that Cersei is preggers, and after that the 2 siblings are somehow cool.
Meanwhile, back at the Dragon Pit, Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke have some sizzling sexual chemistry talking about the freedom and wonder of a metaphor for nuclear weapons. Emilia Clarke then mentions again that she can't have kids, hint hint, hint hint, and Kit Harington says that maybe Mirri Maz Duur was a liar. Of course, Emilia Clarke was banging Daario off and on for 2 years, showing that she ain't too fertile, though I imagine she didn't want to mention this to Kit Harington. Anyway, in some of the greatest off-screen action, up there with the death of the Blackfish and the fall of Highgarden, Tyrion has convinced Cersei to join the fight.
Meanwhile, up in Winterfell, Littlefinger is busy telling Sandra some of the most obvious things in the world that every single human being knows. Kit Harington probably wants to marry Emilia Clarke. Wolverine is angry at Sandra and is next in the line of succession. Emilia Clarke is a horrible actress, and so forth.
And then on Dragonstone, the Alliance of Good suddenly has a navy again, as they're bringing the Unsullied north with it. Kit Harington then suggests they have sex on a boat, and Emilia Clarke agrees. They should have sex on a boat. Honestly, how is this still going on? And then, as if we haven't had enough scenes that suck dead Ned's dick, we have this one between Theon and Kit Harington, where they agree that Theon is still a Stark. And it sadly negates one of my favorite show scenes.
Yes, my captors were so very kind to me. You love reminding me of that. Everyone in this frozen pile of shit has always loved reminding me of that. You know what it's like to be told how lucky you are to be someone's prisoner? To be told how much you owe them. And then to go back home to your real father.
Ah, the happy memories of Season 2. Anyway, Theon decides that he needs to save Yara because Yara's the only person that tried to save him. I mean, kind of. She did slowly wait for Ramsay to unlock a dog's cage and then declare her brother dead, but I guess that's the closest thing to anyone trying to save Theon. He then goes down to the beach and tells the Ironborn that they need to rescue Yara because she would never leave any of them behind. Even though she clearly left Theon behind.
And then we get a bargain bin boss battle. This random guy versus Theon, because violence can cure PTSD and there can never be too many eunuch jokes. And next we get the downfall of Littlefinger, which is incredible. Underwhelming. So in a needless switcheroo that makes half of our season pointless, Sandra doesn't accuse her sister of murder, but instead Littlefinger. Of course, this is really just an ex machina situation. The showrunners decided to have a literally omniscient person suddenly drop in, reveal everything, and save the Stark sisters just in the nick of time. And despite the Bran 9000's omniscience, there is simply so much wrong with this scene. First of all, Littlefinger's accused of murdering Lysa. Of course, this is actually an event Sandra witnessed and apparently never thought ill of Littlefinger over it. She has known this information for nearly 4 years and even lied to the Lords of the Vale about it.
Lord Baelish is my uncle now, in truth, by marriage. He's always been so kind to me. I was so happy to be here, to be free, all because of him. But my aunt turned on me. She cursed me, called me a whore, promised to throw me through the moon door. When Lord Baelish tried to calm her, she struck him. She said she didn't want to live anymore. She stood on the edge of that moon door. He tried to reason with her, promised her she was the only one he had ever loved. But she stepped through those doors and she was...
So Sandra is a big friggin' liar, and Bronzion doesn't seem to have a problem with it. Next we get an accusation that Jon Arryn was killed by tears of lice from Lysa, given to her by Littlefinger. Now, most people think Jon Arryn died of natural causes, and Sandra did testify that Lysa was nuts and Littlefinger was great. Suddenly, she's changing her story with no questions from Bronzion. After this, we get an accusation that Littlefinger wrote a letter to Cat claiming that the Lannisters murdered Jon Arryn. Cat, of course, burned this letter, so we have no proof of this at all. And then there's the accusation that Littlefinger conspired with Cersei to betray Ned. Of course, Ned was planning a coup and Joffrey was king. It's hard to blame Littlefinger for supporting the king and doing what he had to do to survive at the time. And this really was no secret. The throne room was packed with people that day. I'm actually really surprised this information is only coming out now. Littlefinger then protests that no one was there that day, and Bran claims he saw Littlefinger put a knife to Ned's throat. I'm not sure why Bronzion Royce would believe the testimony of a semi-catatonic boy, But again, it's actually hard to blame Littlefinger for supporting the king and doing what he did to survive. I mean, based on this logic, they should immediately execute Varys when he gets into town. The next accusation is that Littlefinger claimed that the dagger belonged to Tyrion when it was in fact his. Actually, Littlefinger did claim it was his dagger.
There's only one dagger like this in all of the Seven Kingdoms. It's mine.
Yours?
At least it was, until the tournament on Prince Joffrey's last name day. I bet on Sir Jaime in the jousting, as any sane man would, when the Knight of the Flowers unseated him. I lost this dagger.
To whom?
Tyrion Lannister. The imp.
The lie, at least in the book, was about who won the dagger. The truth is, it became Robert Baratheon's dagger. And so I'm not sure what the show is claiming about the dagger here. Are they saying that Littlefinger hired the catspaw? Because I'm not sure how show Littlefinger would have done that, considering he wasn't in Winterfell and wouldn't have known if Bran fell. And the final accusation is that Littlefinger sold Sandra to the Boltons. Of course, everyone knew about this already, and it seems to be an honest mistake on Littlefinger's part. He didn't know Ramsay was a monster. And so at the end of the day, we just have a bunch of accusations from Sandra, a known liar. One's about a murder that she already testified was a suicide, another murder that everyone else believes was a natural death, and then an attempted murder that Littlefinger couldn't actually do, and a fairly understandable betrayal of Ned's coup. The only supporting evidence is for the betrayal of the coup, and that evidence is a vision testimony from a semi-catatonic boy. And yet somehow, with this, Bronzion Royce is totally convinced. Now sure, maybe Bronzion holds a grudge against Littlefinger and wanted him dead. Fine. This is mob justice. But that doesn't seem to be what the scene is going for. They seem to be going for Sandra being a clever lawyer and matlocking the situation. She even says that she's a slow learner, but she learns. But that's not really what's going on. This is no clever trial where they outplayed or caught Littlefinger red-handed. The characters received a bunch of supernatural information that was handed to them on a silver platter. In a regular trial, Littlefinger would have either gotten off or at least been offered a trial by battle, as the incidents are unprovable. Instead, we get this frustratingly empty scene that even ends with the Stark passing a sentence and not swinging the sword.
Oh my god, Sweet Robin, how long are you gonna rant about this scene? The scene is absolutely stupid for one main reason. Littlefinger didn't have a plan. Some of these crimes were years and years old. Did he honestly not come up with a plan if Lysa or Sandra revealed the truth? He honestly didn't come up with a good excuse for betraying Ned 6 years later? He was just banking on this incredibly public piece of information never coming to light? Kind of dumb considering he betrayed Cersei and she could have just revealed it at any time. It's an amount of carelessness that's so utterly out of Littlefinger's character that it's laughable. And that's the thing, it took an omniscient boy, a lack of a real trial, and Littlefinger acting completely out of character to get Littlefinger killed in the end. Great job, D&D.
Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, we have Cersei telling Jaime that the Lannister forces won't be riding north because they can hardly make a difference in the fight. Wow. So ironically, it's Homeless Joe that calls out how homeless he is. But as it turns out, Cersei isn't as homeless as we thought. She still has Euron and the Golden Company. It ain't much, but it's something, so at this point I'm rooting for her. Anyway, Jaime decides this is too much for him. Cheating on him, that's fine. Having a torture dungeon, sure. Blowing up the Sept with hundreds of innocent people inside that triggers their son's suicide, why not? But not wanting to fight an army of the undead? Deal breaker. And so Jaime takes off, and a year into winter, it finally starts snowing.
Meanwhile, at my favorite location, Winterfell, Sam has arrived. So Sam is clearly traveling by land, which means he would have passed by Horn Hill, or at minimum, any part of the Reach. So this means it would have been pretty much impossible that he hasn't heard about his father and brother dying, which means we've been robbed of an actually interesting scene. Instead, we get Bran, the Northern Exposition tool, coming together with Sam, the Southern Exposition tool, in the perfect storm of pointless exposition. Let's determine who the monarch should be via familiar succession after familiar succession was violently thrown out the window last season. Fun. Anyway, Bran reveals that Jon is actually the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and that his last name should be Sand. Not to be nitpicky, but no, you can take the last name of where you were raised. After all, Obara Sand was born and lived for the first dozen years of her life in the Reach, and isn't called Obara Flowers. But this all pales in comparison to what comes next. So, for some reason, Sam had been assigned the transcription of a 20-year-old High Septon's diary. I guess the High Septon wrote on some super fast rotting paper and it already needed transcription. And then once again, we hear about this High Septon's antics. He married Rhaegar and Elia, and then decided to annul that consummated marriage that produced children and was the foundation of the Crown's alliance with Dorne, and then decided to marry Rhaegar and Lyanna in a secret ceremony. Now, of course, a secret marriage is a contradiction. Marriage, by definition, is a public and legal union. A secret marriage has no function. But whatever. After that, we have a supposedly romantic scene where some dude in a Viserys wig that I guess is Rhaegar and Lyanna are saying their vows under the faith of the Seven. Lyanna doesn't even follow that religion, and Rhaegar likely doesn't believe in it, as 1, he was obsessed with ancient prophecy, and 2, he just dumped his first wife in violation of the tenets of that faith. We then get Bran saying that Robert's rebellion was built on a lie. Rhaegar didn't kidnap Lyanna, he loved her. Oh god, Bran is such an idiot. First of all, regardless of love, Lyanna made a vow to marry Robert, and Robert made a vow to marry Lyanna. In Westeros, betrothals are a serious business. There was this little thing called the Red Wedding over a broken betrothal. It was in 3rd season, it was subtle, you may have missed it. But no, it's a huge deal that Lyanna is skipping out on her betrothal to Robert. People would still be marching into King's Landing, they'd still be getting murdered by Aerys, there'd still be a civil war. Not to mention the incredible insult to Dorne all of this would be. There's a war right there. The other thing that makes me find this scene so incredibly intolerable is that it treats Rhaegar loving Lyanna like some sort of big reveal. This fact is on the 2nd page of the first Daenerys chapter in A Game of Thrones. That's the 26th page of the book, and it's repeated several times throughout the novel. It's actually the story we are first presented about their relationship. The whole story about Rhaegar kidnapping and raping her, that's the 2nd story. Anyway, in a true testament to their online chemistry, the expositional Bran 9000 has to narrate the love between Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke. And as if all of this couldn't get any worse, they reveal that Kit Harington's real name is Aegon. Friggin' Aegon. Despite Rhaegar already having a son named Aegon, the 3 heads of the dragon were going to be Rhaenys, Aegon, and Aegon. Rhaenys was actually going to have to go around saying, "Hi, I'm Rhaenys, and this is my brother Aegon, and this is my other brother Aegon," like it's an episode of Newhart. I mean, the writers have to be trolling us at this point, right? They're fucking with us. I mean, god damn it, literally any other name would have made more sense.
And next we find out that killing a dude erases all past problems.
And then finally we have Eastwatch by the Sea, where the dead arrive, and Tormund looks surprised despite the army only being a half-day walk in the last episode. And then a dragon with holes in its wings starts shooting blue flames for some reason. You see, when dragons die, they suddenly start spewing butane. And then the wall starts exploding because that's what happens when you shoot fire into ice. It explodes. And then I think they killed Beric and Tormund off screen. So that's fantastic. And of course, after that massive avalanche, we have a perfectly smooth ground for our army to walk upon. I can only hope that this handsome man will put an end to this show as soon as possible.
So what exactly happened at this Tower of Joy?
Well, you know, Lyanna told me to kill the baby, but I wasn't gonna do that.
So the baby is the trueborn heir to the Iron Throne?
No, the baby is my cousin Sasha. Dude, don't you watch previous seasons?
Then what was so important that happened at the Tower of Joy?
So only 2 of us walked away that day.
Everyone else died?
No, everyone else grabbed an Uber. But when leaving the tower, Jiqui and I ran into the others.
The others? Were you afraid?
At first, but then the High Septon showed up and there was an annulment.
An annulment? What are you talking about?
You know, the High Septon was annulling and there was some annulling, and sooner or later, Dan and Dave's souls were put inside Jiqui.
What? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense.
Sure it does, man. The High Septon annulled it.
You can't just spew a bunch of nonsense and then claim the High Septon annulled it.
Whatever, bro. Anyway, years later, there was a secret ceremony.
A secret ceremony? There was a marriage?
No, man, it was a sex change operation. Jiqui became Gilbert Farwind. They're the same person.
How could that possibly be? We've seen them in the same place.
You haven't heard about time travel, man? The High Septon annulled it.
I don't think you understand what annulment means.
Whatever, dude. All I'm saying is that both Jiqui and Gilbert Farwind have Dan and Dave's souls in them and are off on that goat.
This is all getting beyond ridiculous and creepy. Shouldn't we go stop them?
No, I think at this point we can let D&D go fuck themselves.